A third round of negotiations are underway in Geneva, aimed at averting a war between Iran and the USA. US President Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened to strike Iran if Tehran doesn't agree to major modifications to its nuclear program, although exactly what Washington is demanding remains unclear. These Oman-mediated talks coming amid the biggest American military buildup in the Middle East since the US invasion of Iraq in 2003. Well, for more on this, I'm joined in the studio now by France 24's Shirli Sitbon. Hi, Shirli.
Hello.
Now, one thing that's striking with these indirect talks mediated by Oman is the fact that the topics discussed and also the goals the US is hoping to achieve seem to be almost ever-changing. What are the current sticking points, Shirley?
Well, the current sticking points, the major one is really what's in these talks, what is being discussed. Because for the Iranian, it's very clear. Only nuclear issues will be discussed, a nuclear program, and with a bunch of red lines. Meanwhile, the U.S. side says, yes, today indirect talks will be about the nuclear issue, but later on, the second phase, they're going to hit other targets, starting with the ballistic missiles, even conventional weapons that Iran has, which the U.S. wants it to cut down. Let's listen to Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State.
I want everybody to understand that beyond just a nuclear program, they possess these conventional weapons that are solely designed to attack America and attack Americans if they so choose to do so. These things have to be addressed. The negotiations tomorrow and the talks tomorrow will be largely focused on the nuclear program. And we hope progress can be made, because that's the president's preference, to make progress on the diplomatic front. But it's also important to remember that Iran refuses to talk about the ballistic missiles, to us or to anyone. And that's a big problem.
Now, the question is, perhaps, are the U.S. talking about all the other issues, the ballistic missiles, also Iran's proxies in the region, saying that it shouldn't back any group in the region? Well, are these just being pushed so that lines would shift on the nuclear issues? Because the U.S. wants to obtain the maximum it can just with negotiations. And, well, maybe if they're pushing Iran, saying you won't even be able to have ballistic missiles, well, then Iran will maybe try and accept to move a bit further on the nuclear issue. The red line for Iran is being able to enrich uranium on its soil. The Americans are saying, well, if you want to use enriched uranium for power plants or something else, well, you can just import from abroad enriched uranium. The Iranians have not agreed to this. They actually disagreed with this. Maybe the U.S. is trying to push lines on this, and that's why it's pressing on all the other issues.
Shirley, we have mentioned Iran's proxies, its allies in the region. What role have they played in these talks?
Yes, because we always talk about the proxies, and we've seen in the past 2 years that those proxies have actually been largely weakened due to U.S. and Israeli strikes in the region, and also the fact that Syria, the Syrian regime, has been toppled. A new regime is in place, and so Iran is not able to freely move weapons towards Hezbollah in Lebanon. So what we've seen is basically the Houthis in Yemen saying that they're preparing, and if Iran is being attacked by the U.S., well, they'll react. They haven't been very vocal in recent days, but they've said this in recent weeks. Meanwhile, Hezbollah yesterday said that they will not react militarily if the U.S. strikes Iran, but in a very limited way. The words have their importance. They don't want a massive U.S. intervention which will change the regime in Iran. They will intervene in that case, but what they want is to keep the regime where it is, and they're willing to tolerate some kind of U.S. limited operation. They want the regime to remain in place. They've been targeted in recent weeks by Israel several times in the south, and we know that the Lebanese government also wants to take control of all of its territory and take weapons from Hezbollah.
Shirli Sitbon, thank you.